It looks like our number of folks joining in has slowed down, so I'm going to take the liberty to get us kicked off and say welcome. Welcome to the Distinguished Leadership Lecture Series. This is presented by the Department of Educational Leadership here at the School of Education at Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm Dr. Kim Bridges, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you all to be with us today. We're here to explore ways to think innovatively about leading during times of disruption. And so this leadership lecture series and our speaker tonight is all designed to create a collaborative space where academics and practitioners can explore leadership challenges, share innovative solutions, just to advance the well-being of the communities that we all serve. And we're so thrilled to have with us to do just that tonight, Stephanie Klein. And so a few words about Stephanie before she takes over. Stephanie's experience as a three-time Chief Marketing Officer in Fortune 500 firms has really helped her understand the challenges and stress of leading through uncertainty, crisis, and organizational change. When she was a brand new CMO in 2008, folks might remember what happened then. She had to lead her global team through the financial crisis. And when she came up for air several years later, she was diagnosed with life-threatening breast cancer that opened her awareness to the toll her stressful life was taking on her mind, her body, and her spirit. I'm seeing some nods. She realized self-compassion, mindfulness, and balance were critical for her healing journey while opening her up to be a more vulnerable and connected leader, mother, partner, and friend. So after leading through the joys and tribulations of a transformative acquisition in 2017, Stephanie realized it was time for her to walk away and pursue a more meaningful second act. And we're so glad she did, because we're going to benefit from hearing about it. She began a journey of education and growth that led her to become a certified Search Inside Yourself instructor, executive coach, speaker, author, and creator of Mindful Leadership for the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. Her disruptive story of leaving the C-suite was published in the best-selling anthology Turning Point Moments, True Inspirational Stories About Creating a Life That Works for You from 2022. But that's not all, y'all. Her book, Shine Through Disruption, 9 Mindsets for Igniting Growth to Become an Authentic Leader, was published in October 2024. So we're getting some almost hot off the presses info from Stephanie tonight. As an executive coach, positive intelligence and emotional intelligence trainer, educator, speaker, and author, she is passionate about empowering elite professionals to thrive through change. And we are passionate about hearing about it. She helps leaders bravely embrace their authenticity, learn to adapt with choice, and stretch with confidence and compassion so they optimize performance and well-being, building the mental resilience to shift from burnout to balance. What lights her up is seeing how inner transformation creates positive outer change with the myriad ripple effects across relationships, organizations, communities, and our world. And on a more personal note, our own departmental chair, Dr. Whitney Newcomb, has engaged with Stephanie in multiple ways through leadership coaching and through the Chicago Booth, a mindful leadership course that Stephanie teaches. And so while Dr. Newcomb's not able to be here with us tonight due to an event with her children, she asked me to convey, and I'm reading, this is a direct quote from her excitement for Stephanie's partnership tonight and personal thanks for the leadership growth she has experienced with Stephanie as a coach and instructor. Now, if we didn't set expectations high enough, I'm getting ready to introduce Stephanie as someone who's going to just keep our expectations rising. So thank you, Stephanie, so much for being with us tonight. We're thrilled to learn from you and with you through this next few minutes together.
Oh my goodness. Kim, thank you so much for that introduction. It's truly my pleasure to be here, and what a privilege to know Wittenful community. And I was saying before we began, it seems like disruption is never ending, right? And so I think it's really been my big lesson to learn, and I'm so happy to pass along some wisdom today for you all to transform it into opportunity. Because the one thing we know is that change is constant and it's not going away. And often we see this as the disruption we don't see coming as an unwelcome interruption over which we have no control. But if we learn to harness its energy, it's a powerful force for growth. And today I'm excited to show you, in the limited time we have together, really important ways that you can turn its strength to your advantage, whether it comes at you unexpectedly, or you want to disrupt the status quo yourself and accelerate your influence, your impact, and success on your own terms. So Really excited to be here today. I know in conversations with Whitney and other leaders that I work with that are in higher ed, there's a lot of disruption going on. You're facing shifting funding models, federal funding cuts, um, integration of AI. There's so much going on. And I'm excited to be here to help shine a light on how we might handle this and frame it in ways that are going to serve you as opposed to limit you. So with that, uh, Kim did such a beautiful job really explaining my background and the book that I launched in October, Shining Through Disruption. And there's not much more to add in my personal story, except I will say that I truly have had a love-hate relationship with disruption my whole life. Because on the one hand, I have this value of learning and growth. I love to innovate beyond the status quo. And that doesn't happen without change, without disruption. And yet, I didn't embrace change when it was unwelcome. I felt like I wanted to be in control. I wanted to control the wind, if you will. And so during the midst of many of the disruptions in my life, it was really hard to see the forest through the trees. It was hard to see what opportunities were unfolding. And I really felt like I knew how things should be. And I wonder if anybody else here relates to that, having a vision and knowing how it should be. It can be very hard to open ourselves up to new opportunities when that's the case. So I wrote the book I needed to read. And I did a lot of research on this beyond my own personal experience. And many of the leaders, the thousands of leaders I've worked with, have helped inform more of it as well. And their stories are in the book. And so I really know now how we can use disruption to our advantage. And my big why is truly waking everybody up to more of their authentic potential. I'm continually trying to step into more of mine and to inspire others to reveal more of who they truly are authentically as leaders and as human beings, so they can live and lead to the highest degree and with huge ripple effects on the people and communities they serve. Okay, so you know my story about really waking up with a big wake-up call. Having cancer after the financial crisis. And I just want to say what I really learned from that. Even in the midst of life-threatening cancer, I learned that we always have a choice. And it's really to how we respond to what life serves up to us and how we grow from that. And so what I learned was a few things that I'm going to share with you today in our session. One is that I could focus more on my purpose. And my purpose was to stay present so that I could raise my two amazing daughters and see them grow into the beautiful women they are today. It was a huge purpose. And I also got a lot of purpose through my work. And so I was able to really lean into the things that lit me up and learn to empower others and let go of what I didn't need to be involved in. I also had one speed before, and it was fast. And so I really learned to slow down, to breathe, to visualize my health, to take care of myself. We are in a marathon, not a sprint. And as high achievers, I'm sure many of you, most of you here, probably all of you here are high achievers. We often are always moving towards the next milestone. We're not even letting the paint dry on the one we've just finished. And we're moving on and on and on. But we're in a marathon, not a sprint. And so we have to learn to slow down and take care of ourselves. Take a breath. And so we're going to learn some tools to do that in the moment when things are going on. And last but not least, a third thing I really needed to learn was how to disrupt my mindset. My mindset was that you should do more, you should move faster, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and I want to get it perfect. These are again, very, very much a mindset of a person who's trying to achieve at high levels. And it's often this inner critic that beats us up. And it doesn't need to be that way. Instead, we can shift to more empowering beliefs like, nothing is perfect, and I'm doing my very best. There's so many different ways we can replace these limiting beliefs with empowering beliefs that allow us to achieve still at a high level, but at less cost to ourselves. And so I became healthy, and I am still working to keep achieving at a higher level with balance now. And I'm so inspired to be here today and to share. So again, more of what I've learned in my journey, and be connected in yours. Because this world is changing faster than we're prepared for, and it's at this accelerating pace. They say 20,000 years of change in the next 100 years alone. And so this world is changing very quickly, and our capacity to adapt has not kept up. We're amazing beings, but we're basically set up very similar to how we were in caveman times, where we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode when we're threatened, when we feel a stressful situation that we're not necessarily equipped to handle. The good news is we are able to up-level our capacity to adapt and kind of narrow that gap. But we do need to be mindful about it, and we do need to be intentional. Okay, so that's part of the challenge that we have right now. And when we don't do this, when we don't up-level and don't adapt, this is what's happening. Almost half our time of our waking hours, our minds are spent wandering. And this again has been evolutionary to protect ourselves, to scan the environment, to see all the threats out there. And the media prey on this and they distract us with lots of things going on. 70% of leaders regularly are unable to be attentive in meetings. And over 80% of workers report their job stresses them out. And this one is really alarming and leads to a lot of the health issues that we face. 77% of US workers or professionals experience burnout syndrome, and more than half experience it more than once. So this is what happens on default mode when we don't intervene, and why I feel so passionately about doing what I do. In my book, I talk about the 4 elements of potential that we all have, and I love the elements of nature as a metaphor for everything that's going on inside of us, because we all have natural ways of being that can be very disruptive and harmful. And we all have these elements that can ignite better growth, equilibrium, and growth if we learn to operate at this higher level. So when we go deeper inside, we really can start to elevate ourselves and operate at a higher level outside. And I'll briefly talk about each of these 4 elements, and we'll touch on them today. We won't get into them incredibly deeply, but this metaphor will help you understand the potential we all have. So let's start with emotions on the bottom left. I love the metaphor of water for emotions, because just as water flows through us, it also has the power to carve out valleys. So powerful. And our emotions can flow through us, or they can really get in our way, and they can stop us like rocks, like boulders. But with emotional intelligence, we can learn to flow with ease around the barriers, and the greatest leaders understand their own emotions and others, and they're able to connect in deeper ways, both to themselves and everyone around them. So this is just an incredible element for us to master at a higher level. The bottom right is Earth and experiences. And I think of our experiences as our journey on Earth. I have a teacher, Byron Katie, who talks about the fact that we're all in Earth school. Everything that we encounter is here for us to learn, whether it's circumstances or people, even ourselves. But we often get lost in the twists and turns, right? We can get kind of stuck somewhere. And so learning to adapt is really about being able to navigate this with more ease and making progress no matter what happens. Okay. The top left, we have the essence of ourselves, which I liken to fire. Our essence is our spirit, and it's like this spark inside each one of us, as unique as our fingerprints. And it can be a flame that trailblazes our path, or it can be this little spark that's sort of burning out. And it's easy for that to happen because life keeps piling on things, and it can really dim our luminance. And so today we'll actually get into a bit of how we reveal more of that inner spark and brilliance that really lights us up with purpose, so we can move forward in ways that inspire ourselves and others and are motivating. And last but not least, the top right is energy or air. And our energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can weigh us down and feel very heavy. If you've ever walked into a room and something strange has happened, you can just feel it. Or if you're tired, of course, you feel your energy lagging. But it can also be lifted, and it can be lifted very intentionally for us. And it's positive and contagious when we do that. And so as leaders, we can learn how to shift our energy in ways that lift us and raise our authentic confidence and our presence. Okay, so those are the elements, and I'm excited to touch base on how we might impact these and what disruption does to us as leaders and how we can really ignite more of our potential. So here's the quick roadmap that we'll follow on our journey today. And it is all about igniting or building more resilience and transforming disruption into opportunity. First, we'll touch on how we embrace disruption to really clarify more of our values and purpose so we can move forward with resilience, no matter what, with motivation and meaning. Secondly, we'll talk about how we harness the power of disruption. You can think of it like this big wave, and we can either let it flip us over, and I've done this, and end it head first in the water, or we can ride that wave with adaptive resilience to navigate the change. Right. So we'll learn a bit more on how to do that. And last but not least, we'll talk about how we disrupt our mindset. So we shift from the limiting beliefs that might be holding us back, and maybe they're not even known to us. Maybe they're just latent under the surface, and how we plant new empowering beliefs that will accelerate success. Okay, so I want you just to reflect for a moment now on what change you most want to support in our world. You're all working in some way, shape, or form with the university, and something brought you here. What change do you most want to support in the world? And think about it on different levels, really on 3 levels. As a person, what's lighting you up? Relationally, a lot of people get so much joy from working with the people around them. So what does that look like? And collectively, what are you here to do? Right? As leaders, as parents, as individuals, we're here to do something that only we can do. So what fires you up? Right? Tough times can really throw us off balance, and research shows that building resilience often comes down to knowing our why and our purpose, because that we figure out how to do it when we're lit up by that. And I'm just going to share a brief story. Actually, this is right before I launched my book. I went out to Colorado to prepare, and I didn't know this, but at the time, I was there during the 1 week that the golden aspens are in bloom. And this is probably my favorite season, fall. It's also around my birthday, but I love seeing change in all its beauty, seeing all the colors. And these golden aspens were kind of dancing in the wind on the trees. They were absolutely magical. And I stopped to walk among them, and I picked up little golden leaves, and I pressed them in my book. They're actually I think I have a couple here. Yeah, little leaves. I pressed them. They're just so beautiful, and they brought tears to my eyes. And I realized that they were connecting me more to purpose, because as I looked at these leaves and realized they shine so brightly for 1 week, which seems like a very short time, it made me think about how we're here in the scheme of things for a short time, and how we're here to make the most of the time we do have here, to shine authentically and not to shrink into the background. And so for me, they connected me more to purpose. By just leaning towards what lit me up in that moment and picking them up, I started to really reflect on my purpose. And what I'd like to do now is invite you to connect to purpose, just really briefly, but also invite you to do this maybe on a more ongoing basis. Often nature has so much wisdom for us and connects us beyond our ego self to the bigger picture. And I love taking walks in nature. And I wonder how many of you do as well. And we always have the opportunity to ask plants and trees and anything what wisdom they have for us. But right now, given we're inside, most likely you're inside, I'd love for you to look around your space right now and find a physical object, an artifact, or a symbol of the change you're here to make in this world. We don't have a lot of time for this. This is just a taste of it. But I'd love for you to find something nearby that you can look at and realize how that connects to why you're here, or why that's important to you. Why is the object important? Why is it important to you? Why is it important for how you work, for the world? So if you can do this in just a minute around you, I'd love for you to pick something up and reflect for a moment on what it means and share it with us in the chat. Maybe 1 sentence or 2 on what that means to you, what the object is, and how it connects you to purpose. Oh, and I love how Kim put in the chat, the quivering of the golden aspens. Yes, it really is magical. It really is. Okay, and I'm going to read a couple of these here. Kim wrote, I see 4 gorgeous trees swaying in the wind right now, making me think of how I'm working to help leaders grow. Yeah, that's beautiful, Kim. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. See if anything else pops up. And then I'll probably move on, but I invite you to share at any point in the chat so you can all be inspired by each other. Okay, I've got a couple more coming in here. A plant that was nearly dead 3 years ago is now triple the size. It was then with many baby sprouts coming up out of the soil. Yeah, plants are such a great metaphor for growth. Um, I picked up a piece of art a friend and I made together, says I think it's a beautiful way to work towards connection and creativity. Love that. Phyllis, I have a ruler on my desk. It reminds me that there is always room for growth that you can measure. Beautiful. Dana, I have a stone tumbled by the ocean next to my seat. It reminds me of surrendering to forces beyond my control, beyond your control. Laura, my father's lantern. It lights the way. It reminds me of what he always said: life is only worth living through service to others. Evelyn, I've got a little Stitch stuffy in a bunny costume, but the idea nobody gets left behind. I see us all as interconnected and that uplifting one another is a must. Beautiful. Oh, these are so wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. What amazing connections we're getting here. Okay, so, and again, if maybe you're still looking for an artifact, maybe you're not feeling up to sharing right now, all of that is fine. But I invite you to just think about this and think about it in your day-to-day life, because we're getting clues all the time that connect us more deeply. It's really beautiful. Now I'd like you to quickly take a minute and write down the top 5 things that you value. Just write 1 through 5 on a piece of paper. And write what you value. Values are the things that root us. And again, if we're thinking about that tree metaphor, they're kind of the roots in the ground. So when disruption hits, we don't get tossed over. They're really kind of anchoring us to what's important. So just ask yourself, what are the top 5 things I value? And I love this quote by Nietzsche, which is on this slide. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. It's really true. Okay. So I'm going to ask you now to look at your list, whether you have a couple things, all 5, it doesn't matter, but look at what you've written so far and who put themselves on the list. I do this with a lot of leaders and many people leave themselves off. And one of the biggest learnings I got the hard way was when I woke up to cancer, realizing how much it was important for me to reprioritize myself. That proverbial give yourself the oxygen mask first so you can give to others. A lot of high achievers are also overgivers and they give selflessly, but they're not taking care of themselves in the ways they need to. And so self-care, self-compassion is so important. So if you're not on that list, or maybe you're still writing your list, just think about how you could value yourself and what that would look like. Okay. And as always, you're welcome to share, but this was really for you to illuminate what you value and how to anchor yourself in times of challenge and uncertainty. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few little nuggets as we move along here. And the first one is embracing disruption can connect us to our values and our purpose. Values, again, being our roots, and purpose, our North Star. And questions are a form of disruption. Just asking a big question: what change are you here to make in this world? Or asking a tree, what wisdom do you have for me? These are ways for us to disrupt the status quo and really go a bit deeper and connect more. So that is our first big takeaway, if you will. And now I'd like to move into, how we can wake up more awareness about how disruption is affecting us, because it can cause stress that can literally affect the biology of each of us and the decisions we make, the quality of the decisions and the interactions as well. So there's this model from the Conscious Leadership Group that I talk about early in my book, which is called above the line and below the line. It's a simple model just to be aware of how we respond. And when we're below the line, we're in a place of feeling resistance and threat. Right? We are wired biologically to, when we're feeling very threatened, to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? But when we're in that space, we're actually in a space where all the resources from our executive decision making are being diverted to, they go offline, so that we get all the energy into our body so we can run, fight, or freeze. so we can physically take care of the situation at hand. And yet we're now living in a life where that's typically not what's called for. And we don't have any of our executive functioning when we're down here, right? And we can know we're down here because we're feeling defensive. We might be blaming the circumstances or others. We're feeling constricted, right? Think about a time when you were feeling upset, like you were wronged. Just key into how that felt in your body, right? I often feel tense in my shoulders. I feel a tightening in my chest. Think about how you felt when you were down there. When we're above the line, we feel acceptance and trust. We're curious. We're open. We're collaborative. We're creative. We're able to be working at a much higher level. We're able to innovate. We truly we're looking to learn. It's not about being right and being defensive and digging in. It's about opening up and being curious. What can I learn from this are things we ask. We question our beliefs. We listen consciously to other perspectives, bringing in diversity. And we believe all people and circumstances are here to help us grow. Right? So it's important to reiterate that below the line is not wrong. It's actually normal because we're human beings. And if somebody sends you an email that sets you off, that's just what happens, right? You are just reacting in the moment to what happens. So going below the line isn't the problem. That is biologically natural. But when we respond from that place of being below the line, we respond in ways that are not going to be helpful. In fact, they could really upset somebody else. That's when we get into problems. We get into arguments that are hard to unwind, right? We're not seeing clearly and we're not communicating in ways that others can hear. So the important thing is to understand when you're below the line and get that information and learn how to get above the line faster, recover faster, so we can actually be in that space of being able to innovate together and come up with solutions. Okay? So that's really, we're going to learn some tips on how we might recover faster because it's going to happen. And whenever we're feeling negativity, we're below the line. Okay? We just are. And again, totally normal, but how do we respond? So I'd like you just to take a moment right now just to reflect on what more might be possible if you spent more time above the line. Right? Maybe jot down a few things or put it in the chat. And here's something that might keep us below the line. I think this is really important to share with you. We all have a negativity bias, again, biologically primed in us, which is like Velcro. We hold on like Velcro to the bad and Teflon for the positive. Because again, evolutionarily, we needed to know when a plant was poisonous, or there was a threat that could harm our family. But we didn't need to pay attention to the beautiful butterfly, right? And notice all the beautiful details there. We were focused in on what could protect us. When we are inundated with negativity, it limits our ability to focus. We start really thinking about the past and maybe regretting and ruminating, and we start to project into the future, none of which is real, right? The past is over, the future hasn't happened. So we spend a lot of our energy in places that aren't now, that aren't real, right? And research shows that because this negativity bias is so strong, we need at least 3 to 5 positive things to neutralize it. So just a little tip, if you're feeling negativity bias creep in, maybe you've gotten a lot of negative news at your organization or the news about what's going on, how can you feed in positivity, right? How can you look for the good things that are happening or be grateful? Even writing gratitude, things that you're grateful for are wonderful ways to counterbalance the negativity and really neutralize us so we can get above the line. We're going to do a brief poll now on what your typical response to change is. Obviously, it's going to change depending on the circumstances, right? Having your job taken away is a big change. What's happening in the news right now is not probably, well, choose what your typical response is. There's a huge spectrum out there, right? But there's 4 options here. And maybe you even think about what's happening right now this year and you kind of tee into that. 1 being stop, sidetracked, overwhelmed. 2, just working harder and being determined to push past. 3, adapting to what happens and gaining perspective. And 4 is really embracing everything to accelerate purpose and progress. All right, we got the poll going and we got about half of the people participating already. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. Yeah, okay. Got a lot of high achievers that are working harder and feeling determined to push past the obstacles. Absolutely. And then the winner right now is I adapt to what happens, gaining perspective and driving growth. Yeah. And that is so much healthier because you're really able to not resist the things that you can't change, right? And really learn from what's happening. And to rise even further, we can embrace obstacles and opportunities to accelerate our purpose and progress. So we've got some people doing that now. Okay. And I think we've got all the responses. Okay. And we've got almost 20% getting sidetracked and stopped, feeling overwhelmed or burned out. Okay. So, and again, depending on the severity, this is absolutely natural. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has a model about change that a lot of organizations use. And the very first reaction to abrupt change is shock and denial, right? And that is often how I have reacted to change I didn't see coming. Right. Then it's followed by frustration, depression, and then we start experimenting, making decisions, and integrating the change. And so, really, being able to again recover faster is so important. So, thank you all for doing this poll, and hopefully, everybody can see the results. Just share them if those weren't visible before. And now I'm going to show you this model that's in my book, which shows these four elements of energy, experience, emotion, and essence in action in this four-box model. And importantly, the boxes 1 and 2 are below the line. And so when we're feeling really, really stressed and below the line, we might be on the left as a burned out struggler where our energy is really low. And emotionally, we're really feeling victimized. On that left side. And if we're able to not feel stuck and work really hard, we're in that tenacious driver box where we might feel like things aren't fair, but we know that we've got it in us to just work harder, longer, do more, right? That is definitely the mode that I was in for a great deal of my life until I woke up to cancer. So this gets stuff done, but at an enormous cost. When we're able to move above the line, we can get into quadrants 3 and 4. And a lot of you were in the opportunistic adapter quadrant where you're able to get above the line and feel that higher energy and adapt to the change going on around you and learn from it, which is wonderful. And a lot of what I'm trying to showcase in my book is how we even move to quadrant 4, where we're able to bring in more of our purpose, more of our individual spark, and really embrace everything in ways that help us light up more of who we are and have more influence and impact and ripple effect on the world. Right. So importantly, we may be in different boxes at different times, depending on different situations, but just learning with more awareness how to raise our emotional intelligence, raise our energy, and ignite more purpose and adaptability helps us really rise and shift. Okay. If you want to take a screenshot of this, I'm also going to give you a website later where this is on it. But this is the assessment you can take on shining through disruption that will help see which box you're in right now and ways in which you can migrate and progress to the next level. And so I invite you to take a quick screenshot of that. And again, at the end, I'll share my the book's website. It's actually shiningthroughdisruption.com, and you can take this and get some other free gifts. Okay. So I love this quote by John Kabat-Zinn, and I just want to share it because I think it's such a great metaphor for adaptive resilience, which is what we build to be better leaders through change and uncertainty. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. You can harness their power. And importantly, adaptive resilience is it's beyond resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back to where you were. Adaptive resilience is really bouncing forward from challenging situations. So effectively adapting to change and thriving. So it really comes down to accepting and being present to what is so that we can use the disruptive energy to help us move forward. And fortunately, we can change. we have learned that our brains have the neuroplasticity, which means we can change them by what we think, do, and pay attention to. We can create mental habits that rewire our brains in ways that support us in many ways. They can actually lead to greater attention, greater self-awareness, greater emotional regulation, and change our default state. So we can focus longer and really empower ourselves to grow in the ways that we want. When I learned this was like a game changer. I grew up in a time where they thought our brains were fully baked in our early 20s. So this research is incredibly powerful. And Harvard and Yale studies have shown in just 6 to 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation, where we're basically focusing on bringing our attention back to a place that we're focused on. Maybe it's our breath, maybe it's a sound, whatever it is. They can see in fMRI studies that our brains created new neural pathways. So it's really amazing that in 10 to 15 minutes a day over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, we can see the impact of this. More importantly, we feel the impact. We feel less scattered, we feel more focused, we make better decisions. These are really wonderful things. So I'm gonna help you understand just some ways in which this happens. You can do meditation for longer periods of time, or mindfulness in nature where you're focused on different things. But this is just a micro practice that you can do in a minute, in the midst of your busy day when things happen. And it's these 3 breaths. You basically, on this first breath, you notice your body. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling tension in my shoulders, right? I just got upset about something. That's where I hold a lot of it, in my neck and shoulders. So that's on the first breath. You breathe in, notice your body. On the second breath, you notice your feelings. Maybe you're feeling anxious. Maybe you're feeling nervous. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Whatever it is, you notice. And then on that third breath, you breathe in and out and you ask, what's most important right now? Okay. The longer you do some breathing beforehand, the better. But even in the space of these 3 breaths, you can find more calm and centeredness. And I like to share with people that this isn't just a throwaway practice. This really, really works. And I want to put this in action right now and have you imagine that you are at the top of this bridge. Okay. It's a suspension bridge in Queenstown, New Zealand, where bungee jumping was invented. It's 141 feet above the water. And I want to imagine that you are standing right now on the edge of this bridge, looking at this deep gorge below. You've never done this before. You've received no instruction, and you're being asked to jump. How do you feel? Okay. How do you feel? Put in chat if anybody wants to put how they're feeling right now on the top of that bridge. I start to feel my heart racing, a little heat in my cheek. Anxious, says Sandy. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? I love that emoji. No way. Heck won't go there. Weak in the knees, stuck. Yeah, it's pretty scary. All right. So I was there. That's where I was in 2019. I like to face my fear and I like to do adventurous things. But I hadn't really thought it through. As I'm standing on the edge of this bridge, I'm thinking, what have I signed up for? I was petrified. Yeah. And I really thought when I got to the edge of the plank that the guy standing there would instruct me with words of wisdom that would take away this huge fear that I had. But all he said when I got to the edge of the plank was, okay, jump. That's all he said. And I had no confidence whatsoever that I could do that. So I stalled, but I also realized I needed 3 breaths. And I literally said to him, I need to take 3 breaths right now. And so I did. So I first keyed into my body, and feel free to do this with me right now, because you might be feeling a little bit anxious right now with this thing. I breathed in, and on my breath out, I could feel how tense I was in my body. And I could feel my heart racing. And on the second breath in, I keyed into my emotions. And I knew I was scared, but I also didn't fear for my life. I knew they knew what they were doing. They invented bungee diving or bungee jumping, and they knew my weight and all was going to be okay if I had the courage to do it. And then on the third breath, I breathed in, and on the breath out, I asked, what's most important right now? And I realized no amount of thinking about this was going to take away the fear. That the way to get past this was to dive. And so that's what I did. I dove. And I realize many of you will never bungee dive or jump, and I may never do it again either. That's not the point of this. But the point is to show that even with 3 breaths, we can really, in that moment, calm ourselves down and importantly, understand what the most important next step is. We might not know many steps forward, but that's okay. We know the next best thing to do. So it really is an important practice, and I hope you put that in your pocket and take it with you. Okay. And here's another practice, acceptance. It's really the first step to getting above the line again. Breathing in, on the breath, you say, breathing in, I do my best. And on a breath out, I let go of the rest. I have 2 emotional intelligence trainers from Search Inside Yourself that are from the Ukraine that I was in a conference with a couple years ago in Portugal, right when all this stuff was happening with the Ukraine, and they were sharing stories. And this practice, they said, was something they just said over and over to themselves. It was so helpful to them because so much happens that's out of our control, and we can just do our best with what we're faced with, right? So this is really important one. And I wanted to share with you 3 steps to adaptive resilience that really help us go from below the line to above and can be useful for you in your journey. So first, that one is acceptance and awareness. Maybe say that mantra and then breathe. Take a few breaths and we can really recover faster and get above that line and begin again. And then the 3rd step is creating opportunity. We talked at the beginning about really wanting to innovate and use disruption to our advantage. And so we're going to get into more of how we do that, how disruption can help us harness that. But those are the 3 steps to adaptive resilience. And a big mindset or frame that can help us along that path is optimism. Research shows that the number 1 factor for resilience is optimism. And you can look at the glass is half empty or half full. The choice is yours. It's exactly the same. But when we have optimism, we've got this power to move forward. It empowers us. And so, I highly recommend you bring that optimism flag with you. And not toxic optimism where you're not paying attention to reality. That's where the acceptance comes in. We accept what is real. It's not toxic optimism. But then we have hope and optimism that will help drive us forward. Okay, so our shift number 2 is really harnessing disruption and recovering faster when it pushes us below the line and intentionally using it to rise above the line. Okay. And now let's talk about how to create these new opportunities and really use neuroplasticity to our advantage. This is a model that was inspired by the coaching, a company that I was trained in, IPEC. And it talks about how our thoughts, emotions, and actions are all linked. But we have about 70,000 thoughts a day. And so it often helps for us to tap into our thoughts and what we're thinking, which will drive our emotions and our actions. And so it's always helpful to think about what belief you're holding in your head right now, because that will lead to this domino effect, and it will lead to the outcomes that you're experiencing. So for example, I wrote a book. It is very hard for a perfectionist to release a book because it's never perfect, right? So if I have this mantra of it's not perfect yet, then I have doubt. And my action is I keep editing it and I don't release it, right? That's the outcome. But with a thought of there is no perfect, I'm doing my very best, I can have an emotion that it's ready for prime time and I can actually release it to an editor and eventually get it out and publish it. And that's the outcome, right? I've used this with myriad leaders too, who don't think they're ready for a promotion yet, right? Their thought is I'm not ready yet. They don't take action. They don't apply. Of course, they don't get the job. But when we reframe that as I continually learn new things and I will do my absolute best and I'm the best I've ever been right now, then we take action. We feel more confident. We take action. And I have a client who did exactly that. And she got the leadership position she wanted and now aspires to be a CEO. So literally this reframing and rewiring, it creates new emotions, new actions, and new outcomes. It's really, really powerful. And I'd like to just give you a minute or 2 right now just to journal for a couple minutes about if I believe in my empowering belief. Maybe right now you think about the perfect one. Maybe that resonates with you, or any belief that might be holding you back, and think about what a new empowering belief might be for you. If you believed it, how do you feel? What actions would you take? And if everything went according to plan and exceeded expectations, what more would be possible in my life in 1 year? So I'd love for you to journal right now. And I want to share something. We've learned in research that when we journal, when we free write, we don't lift our pen, but we just keep writing, we get closer to our deeper emotions. And so there's a lot of research that shows that when we're able to do that and get into our emotions, we have better impacts. Like people who had lost their jobs journaled for 5 days, and 6 months later, those who did that got jobs at a 67% rate than those who didn't, which was at a 27% rate. But even in a couple days, mood changes happen. So I invite you to maybe play with that. And I'll just give you a minute to do that and have that kind of in your back pocket. And I want to leave time for questions. And so I'm going to bring this to a close soon. But I invite you to take time on your own. Give yourself a good 5 minutes or more to really think about what more is possible with your empowering beliefs and how that might drive you forward. Okay, so the third shift I want to share is just disrupting our mindset opens us up to greater possibilities to think, see, feel, and act differently, and it accelerates growth, right? And disruption to our mindset might happen again outside our control, but we can do it at any point in time. So we've been on this roadmap of really how do we embrace disruption, whether it's with questions or activities to connect deeper to values and purpose, which can guide us forward like a North Star with more motivation. We can also just harness disruption with neuroplasticity, right? By retraining, by adapting our mindset, our minds, feeding optimism, using the ABCs, using 3 breaths to do new things that will actually change the neural pathways in our brain so that we're able to move forward in ways that serve us instead of limiting us. And then lastly, we can disrupt our mindset and shift from the limiting beliefs that might be holding us back to ones that power us forward. So I'd love for you to think about what you can take home from today. What's one thing? Sometimes when we get too many things on our list, we don't do any of them. So even just thinking about one thing that really resonated, just one thing that you'd like to do, and maybe share it in chat. Something that you'd like to take home, because it will be of service if you do share it. Others might be like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Maybe I'll do that next week. But what do you take home right now? And I promised you I would share my website so that you can reach the assessment to take that if you like, and also download a sample chapter of my book. The one on the site is chapter 2, which is about how we shift our limiting beliefs to empowering ones, and some more models for how you could do that. So I invite you to go to chattingthroughdisruption.com and take advantage of those gifts. Okay. And before we get into questions, I just wanted to leave you with another analogy from nature and how we become stronger through disruption. I love the analogy of the diamond because a diamond starts as carbon rock deep in the Earth's mantle, and it's through pressure and heat that its atomic structure actually transforms from the inside into the brilliant diamond, which is the strongest natural substance known to humankind. Any disruption we face allows us the ability to transform. Yeah, so we begin with an experience, we reflect on that experience, and then we can take new action through the inspiration that we've received. And when we do this repeatedly, through pressure and heat, we transform into the brilliant, authentic beings that we're meant to be. And so I'm so grateful for being here with you. And I just want to share my 3 wishes right now. The first one is that you learned a bit more on how to transform through disruption so you can light up the world with more of your authentic, brilliant diamond. And my wish for me is that you share this with me, that I hear that what you've done over the, in a year from now, and I'm able to celebrate that with you. And my wish for the world is that they experience more of the impact of your positive ripple effect, which is what we all need now. Okay, so that's my wish for all of you. And through the heat of disruption and the pressure of reflection, we all transform from our rocky selves, our messy selves, to shine with authentic fire and brilliance. And that leads us now to the comments and questions. So if anybody wants to share anything from their reflections, would love to hear that, or any questions on what I shared that you'd like to delve into further. I'm open to anything for the last 10 minutes. And I think, Kim, should people be putting it into chat or just coming off mute? What's the best way to do that? Oh, I see something in here already. Okay. What's the top practice you suggest for leaders who are trying to support the well-being of their teams during periods of significant change and stress, AKA right now? Okay. The top practice that I'd suggest for leaders to support their teams right now is taking breaks. You taking breaks and you modeling it for them. And I realize there's a lot of work to be done. I do. But I think one of the things we often do is we push through and we work longer and work harder and we get diminishing returns. And even taking a 5-minute break outside or going on a walk in nature. I've seen this happen. I work with clients and sometimes we go outside and we take walks in between doing trainings. And we get in nature and we feel a calming effect, right? We start to move more above the line, we get calmer and we can make better decisions and we can work better together. So I think that's the top thing I would say is really breathing, beginning again, and giving yourself that ability to realize that slowing down will help you accelerate even faster. Even Formula One racers know that they have to stop and refuel. And so I think we're not doing that. Alongside that is celebrating even the interim milestones. We often wait until the end, right? When that big project is done, or, just we're waiting for one thing and we're making that the end all be all. And celebrating the interim milestones, looking for what's good, being grateful for that, really working on that positive to negative ratio. That's so important. So I think that's probably a couple things, but I think those would be really good. And Em said, please share your questions in the chat.
Yes, we probably have about 3 more minutes. We'd love to get a question or two. We have students on this session. We have faculty members. We have folks who are navigating through lots of exactly what Stephanie's been talking about. Anyone else want to ask a question while we have her?
Yeah, and while we're waiting for that, I'm going to add one other thing that kind of speaks to the last question. So, we often don't know what others are thinking. We think we do. We often think we do, but we don't. And so just listening to what's going on. I was just talking to a leader today in a coaching session, and she spoke about another leader being very threatened by a hire they want to add on. And literally just sitting down with somebody who's going through stress and just asking what's going on for them and listening is so important, because then we know what the ingoing mindset is and we can actually talk about what might be a more empowering way to look at this, right? And actually, but meeting somebody with listening is really important too. So I want to add that in. And one empowering belief I always use is, a lot of high achievers, we don't want to fail. And when there's a lot of change and uncertainty, it can feel like failure is right around the corner. And so I often say to myself and my leaders, and I wrote it in my book, is an empowering belief is win or learn every time, right? So things might not go according to plan. They might not be the slam dunk that we thought, but we can always learn. And I love lifelong learning, and I love working with institutions and leaders who love it too. And so I think that's a very empowering belief. And a win is a win, as Liz says. Absolutely. Okay, Dana, being a compassionate leader means having compassion for yourself and others, but not expecting compassion in return which can affect resilience, keeping your personal well fuel. Is there a strategy you shared tonight or that just came to mind that will help with this? Yeah. So I think if I read that right, Dana, it's how we can bring more compassion to ourselves. And I think, I was lucky when I had cancer, I felt the full power of compassion, which I didn't when I was being my normal self, which was trying to be perfect. So I think as a leader, being compassionate to yourself means speaking kindly to yourself. So thinking about those beliefs that you have and how you plant kinder ones. But here's another way that you can receive compassion, which we all need. It's actually voicing when things are tough. Compassion shows up to meet suffering. And so often we're not sharing our suffering. We're just sort of weathering it, right? And we're just trying to put on that brave face. But we literally feel better when we're sharing with a bit of vulnerability in a safe way with people we trust, that it's tough. And that's how we get compassion. And we need it from others, and we can also give it to ourselves. So I hope that helps. To me, vulnerability is the biggest superpower that we have as leaders to help us get beyond the perfection pedestal, but also to bring compassion in, because people don't know. If you're looking like everything's perfect and putting on a brave face, they just don't know. And I see here one that we learned was, or one that I missed. Lisa asked, how do you embrace change when the what, how, why of the change is antithetical to your values? Yeah, that's tough, Lisa. Yeah. Sometimes we might be in a place where it does feel like incongruence with our values, and I've been in an organization where that was the case, and I found another place to work. So if it's at an organizational level, that might be something that you want to investigate. If it's outside and it's feeling like you can't embrace it, I guess here is what I would say is how do you look for the opportunity? And it might be hard for you to do that if you're really triggered by this, if your values are really strong. And in that case, I would talk to others and share what's going on and get other perspectives, because we can't often see the forest through the trees when we're living through huge disruption and change. And I have found the value in community, in hearing other perspectives and knowing we're not alone. I should say the three elements of self-compassion, which are very similar to outer compassion, are first being aware of what's happening. So self-awareness is really important. And the second one is a common humanity, knowing that we're not alone, which is what I was just alluding to. So that in of itself can bring so much alleviation to our suffering. And then the third is offering kindness, right, to ourselves and then to others. So it can be hard sometimes to really see beyond where we are. And so I think really being able to be part of a tribe and part of a group that helps lift you is paramount. I hope that helps. Yeah. And Dana said, love that suggestion. It's hard to ask. It can be hard. Yeah. But like anything, the more we practice something, the better we get. Vulnerability was not something that came naturally to me as a C-level corporate executive in a very male-dominated environment. I was not comfortable there. And as I moved down this path of becoming this executive coach and speaker and mentor and all these things and trainer, I realized how important vulnerability was to create a safe space for others, and how important it was for me to keep growing. Right? It's not about me being an expert. It's about me authentically embodying growth and helping to inspire it in others. And I was asked to be on a panel for coaches to help them understand the C-level. And I spoke with such vulnerability. And at the end, I was told, thank you for being so vulnerable. And that was pretty early on in my roadmap to what I'm doing now. I was so happy to know that my vulnerability was a muscle that I had used enough that it felt very natural. I almost don't know how to not be vulnerable now, because if something's very uncomfortable for me and I name it, it takes it away. It helps me feel better about it. And then I can actually get perspective and growth from others. So I just encourage you to practice. Anything you want to develop more, just practice it and do it in small ways at first, and then it'll grow. It'll absolutely grow. And if anybody needs more support, obviously a coaching relationship can help with that. So if anybody wanted to talk about that, I'm happy to do that as well. So that's That's what I have there. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be the perfect segue to closing us out so that we're honoring everyone's time. And telling my friends and colleagues on the call that this is the place where I think naming things with vulnerability really does bring that listening and that support that you're describing, Stephanie. So I had it happen just today with a colleague who's on this call where I just needed to check that my emotions I was experiencing or the way I was interpreting something was shared, and it was a game changer for the day. So thank you for reminding us of that. Thanks to all of you who joined us for this exciting event. Oh, and I forgot to put my camera back on, but thanks to each of you. There we go. Thanks to each of you for being with us because your time is precious. A very special thanks to Stephanie for taking time to inspire us to turn disruption into opportunity. We just want to remind you of a couple quick things. The Department of Ed Leadership and the School of Education are here. We encourage you to explore our nationally recognized programs in leadership that aim to shape the future of organizations with innovative approaches like the one Stephanie was talking about tonight. Please consider exploring and engaging further with us. We're also copying ways we'd like to see you connect in the chat. VCU Giving Days coming up. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that we would appreciate any investment in our department on VCU Giving Day. And last, but certainly not least, for the final in our series of leadership lectures and explorations this school year, we're going to have Superintendent Melanie K. Wyatt, also a graduate of our fine EDD program, who will be talking with us on Tuesday, May 13th. So please feel free to register. We hope to see you again. And we're so grateful for the opportunity to learn from you, Stephanie, and look forward to learning more from your fabulous book and the work that you're continuing to do. So thank you all.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to be here tonight.